which are more sensitive and more market-oriented, through interest rates, through open market operations, money market operations, and through banks making judgments as to which companies are safe and promising to lend to, and which ones are not safe and should not get credit, even though they may be owned by the government. And that's not just getting the systems right, it's also getting mindset change amongst the companies, amongst the banks, and amongst the government authorities, the regulators as well as the top government leadership, to gradually be comfortable operating in a very different mode, which is also not 100% guaranteed to succeed, but overall will give you better results in the long term. And I think these are adjustments which China must be thinking very hard about and will have to make in the next decade.
And it was in the news always that you are probably the highest paid head of government in the whole world. Your salary level is roughly 4 times that of the United States president. And I was just thinking that it's probably a good thing for government officials to be paid appropriately compared to the bankers on Wall Street. Some say that the reason we had the financial crisis is because all the smartest kids in the whole world are attracted by the finance. This is happening in China as well. All the smartest, best educated kids all ended up working for the financial industry. And the reason is the pay is too high. You can't expect the people to regulate the finance sector to make a salary only 1/10 or 1/100 of those in the PE business.
Well, there's 2 different problems. I think Wall Street's pay and the basis of the pay as well as the levels, that is a problem in itself, which is very difficult to solve by regulation, because whatever rules you make, there will be some way of getting around the rules.
Because they're smart and...
because the incentives are enormous. For the government, pay is another separate difficult problem. You have to pay properly because you want to get the quality of persons to make the important decisions which affect millions of lives and billions of dollars worth of the country's economic output. But at the same time, you have to set the pay at a level which is politically understandable and acceptable to the population, and which makes people feel there's a certain fairness and justice in the system. So we have tried to pay our people properly. In the last election, it became an issue, unfortunately. So we have a committee which is reviewing the public sector salary levels, and I expect them to make recommendations within a month or 2, and we will probably have to make adjustments. But the need for us to get good people in, for us to pay them properly, and for us to be honest about this, I think that will continue, and that is not something unique to Singapore. We may be paid less, I may be paid more than the US president, but I don't fly around in Air Force One, and we do not work on any other perquisites, medical benefits, housing, retirement benefits. These are all, there are none of these. Well, let me say that again. No medical benefits, no housing, no perks, and we believe in a clean salary. So it looks a lot, but I think it's a more honest way of doing it.
And you don't bring with you 800 people delegation to Cannes or APEC, no aircraft carriers around. No.
Well, we are not the most powerful nation on earth.
There's a very important question that I missed when it comes to China, that China's using Singapore as a fine example, which is to build affordable housing for the people.
Yes.
Singapore is a role model for China on this, and also when it comes to traffic control. Are there any proposals or wisdom that you would like to share?
Well, I think your circumstances are very different, but I think some of your problems may be similar in nature to ours, and that is that you have a population which needs to be housed, especially in the cities. In fact, you have a large number of people going into the cities at Hua process, urbanization every year 1% of the population is going into the city. Is 13 million people, is 3 Singapores. And you cannot really expect the private housing market to address this satisfactorily. So the state has a role to play, both in organizing the provision of the housing and also as a social safety net to make sure that the lower income people in the cities and in China are adequately housed and do not feel that they have been left out from the prosperity. But how you do it, I think different cities in China are doing it in different ways. They are making very big efforts. Last year I was in Chongqing, and the mayor and the party secretary were telling me their plans. The scale is enormous, but their needs are enormous too. And even then, I think that you have to be working at this for many years to come, because you will not be able to solve this problem within 3-5 years.
And the government needs to maintain a good consultation with real estate developers and also build a mechanism to ensure that only those in need have access to the affordable housing.
Yes, you need the mechanisms to manage the property market, as I was explaining this morning at the CEO's conference. Every government would like the property market to progress smoothly and stably and without too many big ups and downs. But no government has found the magic of doing that. And if it's too hot like in China, you worry about a bubble. If it's crashed like in America after a bubble, then you have very grievous pain throughout the economy for a long time to come. So you have to try and keep it stable. But for the public sector, and particularly for the lower end, I think you have to insulate the population from these ups and downs, because otherwise it will be very, very painful for them.
Do you think China have too many cars when you visit Beijing and Shanghai and other cities now?
Well, China may not have too many cars, but some of your cities have too many cars. And unfortunately, perhaps I should say, but you have a difficult decision to make. For us, it's easy to make the decision that we have to limit the number of cars because we don't manufacture cars. But China is promoting an automobile industry. And if you limit the number of cars in China, I think the automobile industry may feel that they are being handicapped and disadvantaged. So you have a difficult choice to make. I think that in the long term, if you want your cities, if the cities are to be livable, you will be better off managing the number of cars in the cities. But once people have got used to having a car, to tell them now stop using your car, take a train, I think that is very difficult. And I don't think that you will easily succeed.
Countries like Beijing are trying to limit number of cars as well, but we're having difficulty finding out the smartest way to limit the number of cars. Odd number, even number, lottery, golf cart,
if you do odd
license
number,
plates.
even number, people can afford to buy 2 number plates. If you have a lottery, I may buy more than 1 lottery ticket. So there are, if you ask the economists, they will tell you what to do. You decide on the number of cars and you auction off the right to buy a car. And we try to do something like that in Singapore. And it works, but when the right to buy a car becomes very expensive because so many people are keen, then those who are disappointed get very disappointed and upset. And unfortunately, unfortunately there is no easy solution to that problem.
That's what they call the frustrations of a democracy.
No, every society has its own issues to solve. The Chinese word 矛盾 is ideal for describing this problem. But as you solve one set of contradictions, a new set of issues will arise, and you will have to tackle that one by one. It's the way human societies progress.
We have a couple of questions about yourself as well. A lot of Chinese TV viewers have read about your bio, and they were curious about how you you dealt with health challenges, and what lessons you've learned from life, from rising from these challenges?
Well, I had cancer nearly 20 years ago, lymphoma. Fortunately, it was a treatable form of the disease, and doctors treated me, and they seem to have cured me, and it hasn't recurred. It's a frightening experience to go through. You're not quite sure how it will turn out, but with family support and a lot of good wishes from many people, fortunately I pulled through. It reminds you that life is fragile, that nobody is indestructible or indispensable, and you do your best, but you take it one day at a time.
You were the third Prime Minister of a modern Singapore, and for us outsiders, sometimes the consistency that we observe among all three Prime Ministers of modern Singapore is you're all trying very hard to help to make sure the Singapore economy continues to grow. But how would you like your legacy to be remembered differently from your predecessors, and particularly from your father?
I think if I spend my time thinking about legacies, I will crash. I will do the best I can. The situation is very different today from when my father was Prime Minister. There he was taking the country from third world to first. Here we are at a first world standard of living. But in fact, there's a lot of work we need to do to strengthen the country, to ensure that we have a sound base to be able to prosper even in difficult circumstances for many years to come. And that is not to be taken for granted. If we were the size of China and an hour per capita, then I say, okay, we have arrived. But if we are one third the size of Shanghai, and we are at our per capita, then I say, 人需努力. We need to do a lot more work.
I see. But Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, Minister Mentor Lee Kuan Yew, has always been a very strong inspiration for the entire Asia, one of the greatest speakers and spokespersons for the entire Asia, and he's always been advising the Singaporean government. And I'm sure he's a great mentor and advisor to you yourself.
Yes.
What happens when the father and son have different opinions or serious disagreements? Is there a mechanism for the two of you to work out differences?
Well, we don't always think identically. I think our mindsets are different and the situation is different. But we discuss the issues, and eventually the cabinet has to decide what to do. Because we have to implement the policy, we have to sell the policy to the population, and we have to take responsibility for the outcome. And we can't say that we're just following the Minister Mentor's advice.
And finally, is there anything you would like to share with the Chinese viewers in Chinese, a greeting in Mandarin to the Chinese
我们
viewers?
新加坡跟中国关系非常好，我们两国民间人民的关系也相当密切，来往非常频繁。新加坡人去中国每年人次越来越多，中国人到新加坡人数也不少，所以我希望我们能够加深我们两国的合作，能够深化我们的感情，达到一个互惠互利双赢的效果。
谢谢李总理，
谢谢你。
谢谢，谢谢，谢谢。
May I ask you for 30 seconds more of your time, and we can get another shot?
Okay, okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Prime Minister Lee.
That box has got to go here. Luis, can you move that? I'll move the camera.
It's interesting that you showed up at a variety show or a quiz show in
What to do? We are better to have this problem than for everybody to be poor.
yeah, that's one
You
way of,
can go back to 1970. I'm sure nobody will choose that.
that's a way of looking at it. But if we continue on this path, we're not that far away
You
from
have a
it.
problem because the young generation will not compare with 1970,
Yeah, they will not.
and they will say, "Well, what's in it for me?" And that will come within 10 years. I cannot imagine 10 years from now China will be unchanged, not just economically but even socially, and there will be political adjustments to make too.
Yeah, and what you mentioned in it was very important, that China is at a crossroad. China is like half planned economy, half market economy, whether China chose to